Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are tackling what is undeniably one of the most complex, highly debated topics out there. But we're doing it a bit differently. We are sticking entirely to textual, historical, and academic evidence. We're basically going to deconstruct Islam, putting its foundational teachings of peace and social justice right alongside its modern geopolitical portrayals. By totally setting aside the political rhetoric and just zooming in on the primary source material, we're going to build a really clear, objective framework.
Now, you might immediately notice this massive, stark contrast. I mean, it perfectly captures the contradictory global debate we see flashing across our screens every single day. On one side, you have a divine message that is fundamentally rooted in peace and mercy. But on the other side, strong associations with political violence and terrorism. So our main goal today is to systematically untangle this, separating the foundational, written texts on the left from the modern real-world anomalies driven by the political behavior of some followers on the right.
So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, core concepts and theological origins. Number 2, principles of peace and combat rules. Number 3, dismantling contemporary terrorism. And finally, number 4, historical evidence of coexistence. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, Core Concepts and Theological Origins. Okay, we actually need to start by looking at the very name of the religion itself. The word Islam actually originates from a three-letter Arabic root, silm, and linguistically, this translates directly to submission, safety, and peace. It's really fascinating when you think about it, because strictly at a language level, the word Islam is the exact opposite of war and turmoil. The terminology itself is just intrinsically hardwired to the concept of establishing safety and peace.
And these linguistic roots aren't just abstract theories. They're lived, daily realities drawn right from the primary sources, the Quran and the Sunnah. For instance, peace, or al-salam, is literally one of the revered names of God in the text. Plus, the standard daily greeting that's exchanged millions of times a day globally, it's peace be upon you. Even the ultimate reward, paradise, is explicitly referred to as the house of peace. It's everywhere. The primary texts just consistently frame the ultimate goal of the religion as universal mercy.
Moving right along to Section 2, Principles of Peace and Combat Rules. Now, this brings us to a really foundational legislative principle about the sanctity of life itself. The text states, and this is a direct quote, "Whoever kills a soul, it is as if he had slain mankind entirely. And whoever saves one, it is as if he had saved mankind entirely." That is an incredibly powerful mandate. Islamic jurisprudence uses this specific verse to establish the absolute sanctity of human life and dignity for all people, totally without distinction of race or religion. Basically, a crime against one single individual is legally and morally treated as a crime against all of humanity.
And that brings us to another absolute core legislative pillar, which is the strict prohibition of religious coercion. The text famously says, "There is no compulsion in religion." These foundational texts actually mandate that relationships with people of differing beliefs have to be rooted in justice, fairness, and kindness. It essentially establishes peaceful coexistence as the default state of society, as long as those communities aren't engaged in direct, aggressive combat.
But let's be real. Human history is full of conflict, right? The source material fully acknowledges this, but it treats combat strictly as a temporary exception. And look at the incredibly strict ethical boundaries mapped out here. These were established centuries before the Geneva Conventions even existed. The text explicitly protects non-combatants, so no targeting families or the elderly. It completely forbids random environmental destruction. You literally cannot cut down trees or destroy infrastructure like homes and churches during a conflict. And finally, it absolutely mandates the strict fulfillment of treaties and demands an immediate halt to fighting if the opposing side even leans toward peace.
Which brings us to Section 3, Dismantling Contemporary Terrorism.
So when we analyze global events today, social scientists point out a major analytical flaw, what we'd call a methodological error. It is so common today to confuse the established, written tenets of a religion with the contemporary political behavior of a few of its followers. Academically speaking, treating random violence against civilians as some sort of religious doctrine completely contradicts the source text we just looked at. Why? Because terrorism directly violates those explicit ethical boundaries of conflict we literally just discussed.
In fact, academic and political studies overwhelmingly show that modern extremist groups stem from socio-political chaos, not from traditional jurisprudence. If we really dig into the roots here, it's a mix of a few things. First, geopolitical crises. Think massive armed conflicts that create huge security vacuums on the global stage. Second, the heavy anvil of severe oppression and tyranny, which just creates this socially explosive environment. And critically,
religious ignorance. You have individuals lacking formal education who just cherry-pick verses, completely strip them of their historical context, and totally ignore the overarching foundational laws.
Because of all this, it's super important to impartially report how the actual religious authorities view these modern extremist groups. There is a universal consensus among the major global Islamic institutions, places like Al-Azhar and international jurisprudential councils. They do not view terrorism as a holy war. No way. Actually, they classify these acts under the most severe legal terms possible, like hiraba and spreading corruption in the land. In Islamic jurisprudence, those are among the most severely punished criminal acts in existence. These institutions are rock solid on the fact that declaring war is the exclusive right of a legitimate state government. No independent rogue group has the legal right to wield violence in the name of the religion.
Let's wrap things up with Section 4, Historical Evidence of Coexistence. Walking through this timeline, we can actually see concrete, historical milestones that demonstrate systemic tolerance in real, everyday practice. Starting way back in the Prophet Muhammad's era, we have the Constitution of Medina, which actually ensured equal rights and religious freedom for non-Muslims. Moving forward to Caliph Omar's era, the Pact of Omar explicitly guaranteed the protection of Christian churches, lives, and property in Jerusalem. And looking at an even broader era, the centuries of Islamic Spain, Andalusia, served as this incredible cultural and scientific hub where Muslim, Jewish, and Christian intellects not just coexisted, but thrived together.
And that brings us to a pretty powerful historical reality. The very fact that diverse non-Muslim communities, along with their beliefs, their places of worship standing side by side, and their languages, survived and often thrived for literally centuries under Islamic rule, stands as concrete historical proof of inherent systemic tolerance. It directly supports our sources' finding that modern extremism is much more of a contemporary political anomaly rather than any sort of historical religious norm. Which leaves us with this final big thought to chew on. When we look at all the data, the separation of core written texts from contemporary political actions is absolutely crucial. So how does systematically separating a religion's original written message from the political behavior of a few individuals change how we assess all belief systems moving forward? It's a huge question. I really encourage you to apply this objective, evidence-based framework not just to what we discussed today, but to how you consume all media and information in the future. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the right questions.